We are in the era of artificial intelligence. As an experiment, I have converted one of my published papers in PDF format to a video using NotebookLM. The published paper was the state diagram of foods, its potential use in food processing and product stability. The link is given in the description box. This is an experiment. Therefore, please watch this video until the end and make comments on the understandability and clarity of the contents, quality of the visuals, links between the topics, that is how much clear story it is presenting, and its hallucination.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are cracking the code on the invisible battle happening inside your kitchen pantry. You know the one. It's the fight that turns perfectly crispy crackers into soggy disappointments and hard candies into a sticky mess. We're going to uncover the scientific GPS that food makers use to win that battle and keep your food tasting the way it should.
So let's just dive right into a mystery that I guarantee we have all experienced. You open a fresh box of crackers on a humid day and poof, the snap is just gone. Or maybe you find that one hard candy you forgot about and now it's basically a gooey puddle in a wrapper. So what is actually happening there on a molecular level?
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to follow the clues just like the scientists did. We'll start with an old, kind of incomplete theory about water. Then we'll uncover a really strange state of matter. And finally, we'll build the very map that can predict a food's future. You know, for decades, the food industry pretty much had to rely on trial and error to keep things fresh. But that's super inefficient, not to mention expensive. Scientists knew they needed to figure out the fundamental rules of spoilage to find a reliable way to predict and, more importantly, control freshness.
So, around the middle of the 20th century, they stumbled upon their first major clue. Scientists started to realize that the key to food going bad wasn't just how much water was in it, but how that water was behaving. And this led them to a whole new concept they called water activity.
And here's the key distinction they found, because this is really interesting. It's not about the total amount of water. Nope, it's all about this water activity. Think of it as the free or available water that pesky microbes can use to grow and that fuels all those unwanted chemical reactions. For a long time, controlling this one value was the absolute gold standard for predicting if a food would stay stable. And look, this was a massive leap forward for sure, but it wasn't a perfect theory. Scientists kept running into situations that it just couldn't fully explain. The clue was definitely important, but it wasn't solving the whole case. Something was still missing.
Yeah, the water activity model started to show some cracks. For one thing, it assumes food is in this perfectly stable, balanced state, what scientists call equilibrium, which in the real world is often not true. And more importantly, it tells you nothing about the physical state of the food itself. I mean, is it solid? Is it liquid? Or is it something else entirely? And this is where our next big clue comes in. And honestly, it's a little weird. Scientists turned their attention to this really unique state of matter called a glassy state. It's not quite a solid, and it's not quite a liquid either.
Okay, here's the best way to think about it. Imagine all the molecules in your food are stuck in a massive traffic jam, just totally gridlocked, barely able to move. That's the glassy state. But if you warm that food up past a very specific point, the glass transition temperature, that traffic jam completely breaks. Suddenly, all those molecules can move around, they can interact, and they can cause all the reactions that lead to spoilage.
And this quote just brilliantly illustrates how locked down that glassy state really is. I mean, to put in perspective, some of those ancient, beautiful stained glass windows in cathedrals, they're actually thicker at the bottom because over hundreds of years, the glass has flowed ever so slightly downwards. That's the kind of mind-boggling stability we're talking about here.
And that, right there, that was the big aha moment. If you can figure out how to make a food and process it so that it stays below its glass transition temperature, so it stays in that super stable glassy state, you can dramatically slow down spoilage and lock in its texture and quality. This amazing breakthrough is what allowed scientists to build the ultimate tool. By combining temperature, water content, in this whole glass transition concept, they could create something truly revolutionary. A detailed, predictive map of a food's physical states.
Seriously, you should think of this state diagram as a GPS for freshness. It shows a food manufacturer exactly where their product is. Is it in a stable region or an unstable one? And it tells them exactly which direction to go to make it last longer on the shelf.
So how do you even build one of these maps? Well, it starts out pretty simply. On the vertical axis, the y-axis, we plot temperature. And on the horizontal x-axis, we plot the concentration of solids in the food, which is basically just how much stuff is dissolved in the water. Okay, next up, we draw the freezing curve. Everything above this line is in a liquid, unfrozen state, and everything below it contains ice. This is a boundary that's pretty familiar to any of us who's ever made ice cream or just frozen some vegetables.
And now, here comes the breakthrough. We add the glass transition line, or TG for short. This is the absolute crucial boundary. Below this line is the safe, super stable, glassy zone, and above it, that's the unstable, rubbery zone, where all those molecules are mobile and spoilage can happen really, really fast.
So this completed map now gives us these really clear zones of stability. That crispy cracker and hard candy we started with, they are specifically designed to exist in that glassy state. But when they absorb moisture from the humid air, their water content changes and it pushes them right across that line into the rubbery state. And that's when they become soggy and sticky.
Now, this isn't just some cool academic theory. It's a really practical tool that's used every single day to design better food products. So how does this actually work out in the real world?
Well, food engineers can follow a really clear set of steps. First, they analyze a product's ingredients. Then they plot its own unique state diagram. From there, they can pinpoint the exact temperature and moisture conditions needed to keep it in that perfect, stable, glassy zone, all the way from the factory to your kitchen pantry.
And the impact of this is just huge. It's what helps create the perfect crunch in your cereal. It prevents powdered coffee creamer from turning into a solid brick, and it can even reduce the number of rice grains that crack during the drying process. It really is all about controlling that molecular traffic jam.
But of course, the story doesn't just end there. Like any good detective case, the final answer isn't about throwing out the old clues, but about combining all of them to get a much more complete picture.
So it's totally natural to ask, okay, did this new glass transition idea just completely replace the old water activity theory? Well, the answer, as it turns out, is no.
What scientists ultimately realized is that these weren't competing theories at all. They're complementary tools. Water activity tells you about the chemical potential for spoilage, while the glass transition reveals the physical possibility. And to truly finally solve the mystery of food stability, you need both clues.
This whole way of thinking, of mapping the physical state of complex materials, is a gigantic leap forward for food science. And it kind of leaves us wondering, right? What other everyday problems, from medicine to new materials, could we solve by creating a kind of GPS for the invisible world of molecules?